everyone. My name is Shawn Wilkie. I'm the CEO of Talkatoo, and I'm super stoked to be coming to you from a hotel lobby for our first webinar series that's ever happened like this. I've got a good friend of mine lined up for a great conversation. I think, Josh, the first time that we've actually spent time together was in San Diego. Yes. On a bunch of scooters, yes, ripped around that beautiful city. And we got a chance to really get to know each other. So I'm super excited to introduce Josh, who's a great friend of mine from the vet industry and an all-around amazing guy. Josh believes that all veterinary professionals deserve to be fulfilled by their work each and every day. And so he started a company called Flourish Veterinary Consulting. He combines more than 20 years experience in the veterinary world with a master's in applied positive psychology and coaching. Josh, like I said, is just one of these guys that when you meet, it's very, very, very easy to kind of get Josh, you have a vibe. I think that's what you have a positive vibe. And, I know that you've done tons of stuff with positive leadership and positive organizational scholarship, and you've got a passion for guiding leaders to cultivate work environments in which people can thrive. Fun fact about Josh, he's also an avid beekeeper, which sounds very dangerous, who teaches all over North America and has some of the most interesting clients that we've had a chat about. And I've actually got a chance to meet some of Josh's clients. So Josh, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you, Shawn. It is an absolute delight to be here.
Yeah, it's so great to have you here, Josh. I remember, it was middle of the pandemic and I was sitting in a room with a bunch of other veterinary leaders, and I got the pleasure to listen to you speak.
Yeah.
And you told a story, and I'm wondering if, Josh, if you might be able to just share a quick version of that story, because I want the people that have joined us here today to know the kind of guy you are and the kind of experience you bring to the work you do.
I think the story that you're after is my personal breakdown story. I think that's what you're alluding to. Yeah. So
I want to call it anything.
Fair enough. I appreciate that, Shawn. I appreciate that. Yeah. Shawn, I've been in the veterinary community for a long time now, since the late 90s. It's kind of hard to say or hard to imagine that I'm finally old enough that I can say I've been doing something for 25 years, but I have. And I served in a whole lot of different roles, including ownership. I was a partner in a couple small animal hospitals. And, I think ultimately what it boils down to is I found myself kind of chasing the sort of standard metrics of what people might call the American dream. I was, really after trying to get wildly successful as an entrepreneur. And I started to let that drive really overcome a lot of my personal values. I started to lead and make decisions in a way that put numbers ahead of human beings. And in doing that for a long time, I made some money, but I was kind of stabbing myself in the soul every day with the way that I was doing things. And eventually it resulted in me really just completely burning myself out. And that burnout for me, while it was a slow smolder to lead to this point, it really kind of manifested in a rock bottom state where I distinctly recall standing in my kitchen, making breakfast for my wife and I, like any other morning. It was just a random Tuesday, and just breaking down, like completely breaking down, ugly, uncontrollable crying on the kitchen floor for literally no reason, as my very surprised wife looked on and was like, "Oh my gosh, are you okay?" And the only words that I could muster were, I don't know what's happening to me, but I can't do this anymore. That was a pretty shocking place to find myself. You described me as somebody with a nice energy and a good positive vibe. And, the truth is, for most of my life, I've been a pretty optimistic and hopeful guy. So it was a shocking place to find myself that dark and that low. And it made me realize a few things. The first thing is, we spend so much of our time in and around work. I mean, by various metrics, 30-40% of our adult lives is related to our work. And in many ways, we self-identify by the work that we do. It's one of the first questions we ask people when we meet them, right? What do you do? Because that's one of the most important things that we want to know about each other. Maybe
Josh,
work.
I'm gonna cut in there because it
Yeah.
really lines up well with my thinking right now, which is,
Mm.
it's just a perfect insertion point. So at Flourish, like, I know the company, I know your message, I've got to see you speak, I've got to see you do your magic, but you guys talk a lot about this concept of human thriving.
Yeah.
And for our listeners out there, they may be able to relate with you on the kitchen floor, but they may not be able to relate with this concept of human thriving. So can you explain that a little bit and what it looks like in the veterinary industry?
Sure, absolutely. I think for me, human thriving is sort of the opposite of how we tend to approach work. I think so many of us view work, even this kind of work, this important, meaningful work of veterinary medicine, as something that we survive. We wake up Monday morning, the alarm goes off, and we're very quickly thinking about, man, when is Friday going to come? Because we just want to get through the work week to the other stuff. That doesn't make sense to me. If we're going to spend 5/7 of our life, 5 of the 7 days a week at work, work should be something that doesn't deplete us. It should actually contribute to a life well lived. And for me, this idea of thriving, what that boils down to, I think of thriving in the workplace as being able to, reach, or at least reach toward, my full potential as a human being, being able to unleash and unlock the best parts of who I am through the conduit of work. And when I do that, I get to experience what we call fulfillment. And work should be a source of that. Work should be a source of personal and professional fulfillment. When we create workplaces that allow and enable that, we get human thriving.
Josh, I absolutely love that. And I mean, I think anybody that listens to those words can think of a time in their career when they were thriving, and they can think of all of those other times.
Yeah.
So, for the listeners out there, how do you make that transition from not thriving, as worst as one possibly may be able to accomplish that, to thriving? How do you make that change?
It's a wonderful question. Thank you for asking that. For me personally, because of my lived experience in the past that I had, I recognize the influence and impact that I had as a leader. I was a hospital owner. I was the managing partner. I was the on-site hospital director. I was directly influencing the experience and the capacity for people to even start moving in that direction on a day-to-day basis. So I tend to focus personally very heavily on leadership. One of the reasons why is because the higher up we are on the hierarchy, the more influence we have over the environment. And we know that there are things environmentally within the workspace that seem to contribute to thriving, that seem to make thriving possible. For example, when people work in an environment where they feel heard, where they feel that their voice has a value, where they can speak up and contribute, even if that contribution seems to be a voice of dissent, that is absolutely a nutrient that contributes to thriving at work. When people feel as if they matter, the things that they do matter, that they get to see the positive, purposeful contribution of the tasks and activities that they're involved in on a day-to-day basis, those things absolutely contribute to the capacity to thrive at work. When people feel that they can achieve, that they understand what's expected of them, they have the autonomy to pursue those expectations, and they have the resources and support that they need to actually get there, that sense of achievement, accomplishment, that growth that comes with that, 100% contributes to human thriving. And then finally, when we have high quality relationships, when we get to connect with the people that we work with and the people that we serve in a way that's meaningful to us, absolutely contributes to human thriving. So those are kind of the 4 pillars that we're trying to help organizations cultivate so people can actually thrive in their work.
So Josh, this sounds amazing. It sounds thoughtful. It sounds like maybe there might even be some data that would prove that this might make sense. How about that for a softball?
Yeah, that is a 100% a softball. Thank you for that one. I think I just caught it. Uh, yeah, there is absolutely data. So everything that we do at Flourish is really steeped in science. The whole mission of the organization is to translate that science of human thriving in a way that people in the veterinary space can actually use, that's digestible and applicable. So all of the things that I'm talking about are evidence-based. There is myriad research across a wide variety of organizations and different types of industries that show that these are some of the basic core psychological needs that, when met in the workplace, contribute to thriving. By the way, don't just contribute to thriving. Thriving people perform better. They're more productive. They're more efficient. They're more creative and innovative. They're more resilient, and they're significantly more likely to stay in an organization. So we started to get interested in those things ourselves in our organization. You know, we hear, I'm sure you hear about it all the time, Shawn. We have a retention problem in veterinary medicine, and that's really come to a head for us because, you know, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, if you were losing team members, no big deal. You put an ad on Craigslist back in the day, and in 24 hours, you got 50 resumes. Well, that's not happening anymore. Veterinarians and technicians are not growing on trees. So we've got this 20, 30, 40% turnover rate, and there's nobody to backfill it. That's a problem. So we decided to measure these things. We've been conducting some research this summer. We have a survey that's been open for about 2.5 or 3 months now. We've collected almost 600 responses. Veterinarians, technicians, kennel techs, CSRs, small animal, large animal, specialty, emergency, general practice, all different roles, all different types of practices. And we asked them, tell us, do you actually get to experience what we call psychological safety at work? Do you actually get to experience mattering and meaningfulness? Do you have a clear path to achievement? And do you feel connected to the people around you? And what we have found is that when people respond that, yes, I have those things, we have seen a significantly improved tendency for them to actually plan on staying in that job. One of the questions that we ask in the survey is, how often do you think of leaving this job? Another question is, how often do you think of leaving this profession? We see that as those experiences improve, people are significantly less likely to say, I'm looking for another job. And importantly, I think for us long-term, significantly less likely to say they're thinking of leaving the profession. So this stuff, it matters and it works. People who stay in jobs do better over time. They grow into the position, they improve, they develop skills, and it's a lot less expensive to retain somebody than to replace them. So there's the data.
So Josh, who gets this? You know, you have a lot of conversations, a lot of people, and I don't want to list your clients. I don't want to list the people that are on the naughty list.
Sure,
but
sure.
I'd like you to describe to me, like, how is this data being received in the industry, and who gets it, and who's trying to do things about it?
Yeah.
Feel free to share anybody that you want.
Fair enough. Well, Shawn, you'll recall a little while ago, I said I've kind of been a pretty optimistic and hopeful guy most of my life. I was able to recapture much of that optimism and hopefulness. I genuinely believe that the vast majority of people in leadership positions in veterinary medicine here in the States, up there in Canada, around the world, I really, really believe this. I'll take this to my grave. I think almost all of them are good people with good intentions, doing the best they can each and every day. I really believe that. So I think that when people see this data and they understand the concepts, they embrace them. I just think nobody's ever taught us this before. No one ever taught us how to lead human beings, how to create environments where ourselves and others can actually thrive, can achieve fulfillment, and be at our best at work. So when they get to learn about these things and they see these things, yeah, I think most of them actually really do embrace it.
That's absolutely fascinating and such good news for the profession. Because yes. I think there is definitely this view that somebody is the problem. I've seen it over and over again with the conversations that I have in veterinary medicine. And it's so encouraging to think that, you know, it's just a matter of getting information out there. And,
Yes.
that's what we're hoping to do today. So it's kind of nice that you're here and you're able to do that with us.
Shawn, you said something. I really want to capture this because I think this is critical. I think you're absolutely right. I think that when we step into situations that don't feel good, when we work in a workplace where we feel overworked, overwhelmed, under-resourced, under-supported, unnoticed, and unappreciated, those kinds of things, they cause pain, psychological pain, emotional pain, but it's pain. And when we're in pain, we're looking for some sort of an outlet. So it's totally normal that our response is somebody here is to blame. What I would encourage people to start trying to think about is, it's not that people are problems in our profession. There are some. I'm not naive. I know that there are some bad eggs in the profession. I just think they're far fewer than we tend to think. It's the way that good people behave that contributes to these problems. If good people don't know any other way to be or do, we do what we know, and what we know is not working. So we're trying to teach a different way. It's really hard to change the core of a human being, but it's not that hard to change behavior. And so if people understand I can behave in a different way, and it'll actually help me unleash my values. It's important to me that the people around here do and feel well. If we could show them that there are behaviors that they can learn and adapt to, my gosh, yeah, things will change.
Josh, it's so fascinating. And I think that these conversations are so important for veterinary medicine.
Agreed.
I had the luxury of hosting a panel in Kansas City with a couple of our friends, Quincy and Renee from Get Motivated,
Yes.
Adam Crispin, and Kelly Cairns. And the topic was burnout. And they, like you today, all shared their personal stories, which were humbling. I shared my story of burnout. I think anybody that's been in a leadership position that doesn't know how to lead will experience burnout.
Yes.
It's almost guaranteed. So this idea of getting this information to the people that need it, I know generally what you do, but Josh, if people are listening today and they're like, you know what, I was never trained as a leader and I'm struggling with this leadership thing, what can people do to leverage some of the stuff that you've put together with your team?
Yeah. So as an organization, we try and put content out that can be helpful to the profession on a routine basis. And that's just stuff that we're just putting out there and giving away. This survey, this study that we're conducting that I referenced earlier, we're just starting data analysis on that. It'll probably take us a few months, but once we have all that data, we're just going to put that out in a white paper for everybody in the profession. We're not selling it. We want people to understand that these are the things that can help this profession get better. And sometimes, reading a book or reading a blog or going to our website or reading some of the things that we put out in the, periodicals or attending one of our talks or workshops isn't quite enough. Sometimes people need a little bit more support and guidance. And we're there for that too. I mean, we're a consulting firm first and foremost. We want to help guide and, cultivate relationships with people who are on the ground doing the work so that they can learn how to do those things better. They can learn leadership. So leadership development's a big part of what we do. We do some work with appreciative inquiry change management to help, organizations develop a forward-focused, forward-looking, optimistic approach to growth and change. We do, speaking and workshop engagements. We do professional coaching. In particular, I'm very fond of coaching high-level leaders and executives on how to become better positive leaders. Those are all the kinds of resources that we offer internally.
And I know they're awesome because I've had the pleasure to see you speak a couple of times. Josh, just unbelievable stuff. But one of the things that comes to my mind is I know there's people listening in the profession that are not in a leadership position, but maybe they're working for like one of those very toxic leaders that doesn't have experience and they're thinking about quitting. This actually seems to happen, I don't know, a couple thousand times every day right now in this profession.
Yes.
But maybe they really like some of their coworkers and maybe there's like a foundation of something that could actually be awesome. What the heck can they do to like have that conversation with somebody that maybe doesn't even know that they need to have it?
Yeah. Yeah. So Shawn, if I'm hearing you right, you're asking me, so I'm just a technician in a practice, and the hospital manager is, behaving in a pretty toxic way, and I want to talk to them about that. How do I do
Well,
that?
well, that's exactly right, Josh. And you picked up on it. Even just saying just a technician is things that I've heard in a
That's why
hospital.
that's why I put it on quotes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really appreciated it. Or just a CSR, or just somebody that cleans the kennels. Like, that's, I guess, my way of tipping off
Yeah.
that a great sign that maybe the culture, maybe the
Yeah.
leadership's not what it needs to be. But how
100%.
can you have that conversation? I mean,
Yeah.
I guess anecdotally, I can share a story. When I was 23 years old, I was running my second company, sitting on a volunteer board, and somebody that was in a very senior position that had maybe 2,500 people working for them came up to me after the board meeting and said, do you mind if I talk to you for a minute? You're going to burn out. You're going to treat people like crap. No one's going to want to work for you if you don't do something about this fast. And this was somebody I respected.
Yeah.
So it's maybe a little bit of a different situation,
Sure.
but that was a turning point for me in my career.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
somebody that I actually trusted came and said, hey, heads up, you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. I thank you for sharing that story. That actually fits right in line with what my response would be. So I don't want to be dismissive. I want to recognize the realities. If I'm in a junior position, especially a significantly junior position in a practice, and there's somebody in a position of authority and power who is treating me poorly, that dynamic creates a lot of barriers. It's a really hard thing to go up to the practice manager when you're in that junior position and be like, hey, you're acting like a jerk and this is how it's affecting me. I'd like to see you change. It's a big ask. I recognize that. So I'm not being dismissive or naive with my response here. But I want to share a little bit of research that was really life-changing for me when I came across it. There's an organizational psychologist by the name of Tasha Eurich, and Tasha did a 4-year study, essentially trying to identify people in leadership positions who are truly self-aware. Now, she had a very robust definition for self-awareness and a very strong way of measuring it. So this was not just a, hey, I'm going to go talk to people and see how aware they are. It was very evidence-based. It was a very scientific, strong study. Very quickly into this endeavor of trying to find these people so that she could study them, her and her research team started to refer to them as unicorns, and that's on purpose. What Tasha discovered in her work was that, what Tasha discovered is that while probably around 90 to 95% of us would report on a self-assessment, I am a very self-aware leader, really only about 10 to 15% of us truly are. And so what that means is that most people, this is why I go back to that thing of my belief about people in leadership. Most people in leadership just simply aren't aware of the impact that their behaviors are having on the people around them. And because they're in leadership, no one will tell them. And so we get into this habit of thinking, well, everybody seems fine, I must be doing it right. And nobody's giving us any other feedback. If somebody can somehow muster the courage and bravery to do what that person did for you, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a gift for that leader. It's just finding the courage to do it. That's hard. That's really hard. So I recognize that, but I really do believe that most leaders just really don't realize that they're having the kind of impact they have. That said,
Josh, I'm going to jump in there and say,
please.
Listen, every day I always tell myself, nobody woke up today, decided they wanted to go to work, and that they were going to be an asshole to everybody. No one ever does that. We get up, we want to be productive, we want to be collaborative, we want it to be smooth, we want it to be enjoyable. And so, things get in the way. And my advice to my own question for you, Josh, would be wait for the right moment too. Like a message delivered at the right time is a gift. A message delivered at the right time is a curse. And simply, like, asking, would it be okay if I gave you some feedback?
Yeah.
That's it's like a nice safety switch, because if
Yeah.
your leader's stressed and they're not having a great day, they might say no and then wait for another time.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a concept that I talk about a lot when I speak on psychological safety in teams. And we try and teach this as well. But, you can think of, Shawn, if you think of somebody in your life who just genuinely cares about you, loves you unconditionally, you are God's greatest gift to the earth to them, right? Like no matter what you do, they're always going to care about you.
Josh, I said that we weren't going to talk about my mother on this.
I know, right? So that's who I think of too. My mom exemplifies unconditional love, right? Now think of somebody in your life that cares about you and cares about you enough to see your potential and has no problem when you're falling short of what you're capable of, kind of nudging you back in the direction you need to go. That's somebody who we think of as a caring challenger. And what Tasha Eurich discovered was that almost universally, the truly self-aware leaders, the leaders that did the best at adapting, at evolving, at progressing, at recognizing and learning about the impacts they were having, almost to a T, they had a caring challenger that helped them see, hey, listen, Shawn, I'm here. I'm talking to you right now because I know what you're capable of, and I really want you to do well in this position. And, when you do this thing, it kind of makes the team feel like shit. And I don't really think that's actually your goal. So can we talk about like maybe some different ways you could approach that? That's a conversation that a caring challenger would have with us. I just saw you kind of sigh even thinking about it, because it would be a gift if somebody came to us with that. And I know in the high stress environment of a veterinary hospital, when we're running around just simply trying to get through the day and the manager seems clueless and rude and obnoxious and toxic and mean, it's really hard to put ourselves in the space of seeing that's actually a human being who's trying the best they can. And I might be able to help them do it a little bit better. That's a difficult, big ask. I get that. So that said to that would be, sometimes if we can't do that and the situation is untenable, it's totally fine to go find a different place to work. I think that that's okay too. But if we can find ways to give each other these gifts of self-awareness, I think it will change our profession for the better.
Josh, and that's actually like a perfect segue into my last question before we go to the audience. So we've got a great group of people here. If you've got questions for one of the smartest guys I know in the veterinary industry, no time like now to type those into chat. So Josh, the people that are listening, this concept of well-being, a buddy of mine the other day said, well-being is not more yoga. But it was really interesting. This concept of well-being is difficult. It's challenging. Mm-hmm. It's like, we know that we're supposed to do certain things, but we don't do them because we're humans.
Sure.
So how do we start? If I'm in a bad place and I just need a bit of a push to get me going, could you help maybe provide that push?
Yes. I'll share two quick things, tactical tools. It seems that you're after something tangible. So I'm going to share two quick tactical tools. The first one is I'm a big fan of sort of a little bit of intentional self-exploration. So what I mean by that, Shawn, is maybe you've got some time after this call and you've got nothing else going on this evening. You've got a little bit of quiet time by yourself and you're thinking to yourself, man, I really would like to do more to support my well-being. What I would encourage you to do, one thing, is to sit down and spend a little time, just a few minutes. If you want to write it out, that could be helpful, but you don't have to. Think back to a time recently when you felt just really good, when you just kind of felt like you were at your best, when you felt like, man, this is the kind of energy I would love to recapture. Try and think about what was happening there, what led up to it, what were things that you did or decided, decisions and actions that made that event possible. Think about how you can replicate that just maybe one more time a week. Just those small little things of thinking about when are the times that I do actually feel at my best? What's happening? What's contributing to that? How can I replicate that just one more time in some sort of a time period and setting that as an intention, that can be a really nice way to kind of start building up some of these things. Another thing that I'll offer is to think about impact. There's some really compelling research conducted by Barb Fredrickson and some colleagues where they basically identified people by their drive. One group was what you might call the people who were here for the party, the hedonists. All I want to do is feel good. They're the happiness pursuers. And then the other group is the people who, are really about impact. What kind of a contribution am I making to the world? They were in the pursuit of meaning. They followed these people over multiple weeks, had them conduct random surveys. They had a pager that told them when to do it. And they found two very interesting things. Number one, the hedonists, the people that were after the party, the people that were like, I got to feel good. I got to feel good. Actually reported upwards of 50% less positive emotions over the 6 weeks than the people who were pursuing meaning, who were purpose-driven people. Another interesting finding, the people who were pursuing feeling good, they took blood samples on them and they found inflammatory markers in their bloodstream significantly higher than the people who were pursuing impact and meaning, the purpose-driven people. So ultimately what the researchers said in their paper was, it seems that the pursuit of happiness is about as good for us as chronic illness. So I'm a fan of looking for contribution. Maybe once a week, you sit down for 5 or 10 minutes and write in a journal or collect in a Word document on your computer. What are 2 or 3 things that I did today that had a positive impact on the world around me? Or 2 or 3 things I did this week that made some sort of a positive or meaningful contribution to the world? 2 or 3 things, small, big, or anything in between, that I somehow lived my values and lived towards the purpose that's important to me. I think those kinds of small things can refocus our mindset and help us see that we already are practicing and living well-being. We just don't always take the time to notice it.
Josh, it's a great time in history to hear this stuff if it's the first time you're hearing it, because it can benefit one so much. Your mindset, the outlook that you have on the world determines your reality. And, you can change. It's super cool. So we've got tons of questions, as I knew we would, and we're going to run out of time. So we got to go quick. Josh, people want resources. So go to your website. I'm guessing that's going to help quite a lot, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So on our website, we have a very active blog. We're putting out evidence-based articles roughly every 2 weeks, and those are freely accessible. So that's a great place to get some resources for sure. I'm excited to share with you, Shawn. This is the first time I'm sharing this publicly. The first part of it is, what's that?
Let's build it up a little bit more.
Right.
This is awesome.
The first part of this has actually been shared publicly before, but the second part is not. I have spent the last 2 years writing a book on these concepts for AHA. AHA will be publishing it through through AHA Press next year. Now, up until this point, it was going to be an ebook, which, is kind of hit or miss for some people. But AHA just informed me this past week that after going through development editing review, that they have decided to actually publish it physically. So there will be a physical print book on the science of cultivating a positive veterinary culture that will be coming out hopefully late next spring. And there will be an audiobook as well. I get to narrate the audiobook.
No way.
Yeah. So I'm super excited for that. Yeah.
So cool.
So
Gosh, we've got so many questions. I got to get to a couple of them, and I just don't want to keep people long. So, I'm a CSR and a tech at my clinic. We both work for a doctor that's just been promoted to chief of staff. He has perfectly tried to get other doctors fired because he doesn't like the way that they practice, and has bullied techs out of their jobs. Our HR and our owner, who still work in the office, really love him. And I don't think they would appreciate this feedback. How the hell does she help this clinic? It needs some help.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got a doctor who's behaving like what looks like a bully. He's practicing in a way that feels like bullying. I personally think that's something that should be taken very seriously. And, if we feel that that's something we can address with him directly, that would probably be the best place to start. What I heard mentioned in there was HR and ownership, and the perception that those people seem to really like him. That said, they may like him because they're not aware of the behavior and the impact that behavior is having on the team. So if we can't find a way to go to this doctor directly, I'm definitely going to encourage you to at least go to the people, that have some level of authority over him and try and make them aware. Now, I always encourage people sort of check your intention. If the intention here is retribution or revenge, it's probably not going to be a very successful endeavor. But if the intention is to try and help him be and do better, I think that's a great place to start from.
Josh, it's just like one nugget after another with you, my friend. Thanks so much for being here and doing this. We really, really appreciate it. I've got like one more question that I'm going to squeeze in, and I'm really sorry because we did tell people we'd wrap up on time, but I just can't help it. So this concept of psychological safety that we've talked about a lot. And then I love this listener listening to everything that you said. She said, how does that contribute to thriving in the workplace? So psychological safety, how's it work?
Yeah. So when I was talking about voice and people feeling heard, as if they can sort of bring their whole selves to work in service to the purpose of the work, that really is psychological safety. And for me, that's the foundation. I think of psychological safety as the fertile soil in which high-performing, happy teams grow. So the very quick sort of academic definition, psychological safety is the belief within a team member that the team environment is safe for what we call interpersonal risks, that I can express myself. I can have a potentially dissenting view. I can challenge the status quo. I can step into an activity that maybe I'm not that good at, but I can try knowing that I might fail. All of this knowing that the team around me is not going to snap at me. I'm not going to suffer punishment or retribution because I screwed something up or because I had a different perspective. This is essential to thriving. People who don't feel heard start to lose the experience of mattering. And if we experience anti-mattering at work, that's it. Game over. You can't thrive in an environment that you don't feel like you matter. So I think psychological safety is absolutely the foundation of that.
So we're gonna definitely get some resources and send them out to everybody that's been on the webinar. Josh, every time we hang out or talk, I get all fired up, and now I'm gonna go and try to somehow go to sleep. It's late here and I have to work tomorrow. Not that late, but Josh, it was such a pleasure to have you. I guess scooters in San Diego in December, maybe.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Thanks, Shawn. Really appreciate you, man.
Really appreciate it. Thanks everybody for attending.